friends, it's Unicorn, and today I want to talk about my reading goals by answering some questions on the reading goal tag. I was tagged by Freddie from the Sluggish Reader. I really love his reading taste. He just have a lovely channel. If you haven't, just check his channel out. I'll link it down below as well as the original tag. In terms of this tag questions, I really like these questions because reading goals is always something that I'm thinking about, especially being on BookTube for so many years. So without further ado, let's dive into them. The first question is, do you set reading goals? Why or why not? Well, if you're hanging around on my channel for a bit of time, you'll know that I do set reading goals. I set reading goals every year at the beginning of the year, and also I set monthly reading goals by doing the monthly TBR. But I do have a reason why I do them, because I don't necessarily stick to them, but setting goals is one of the ways to calm myself down and letting me know what to do in the future times and release me from the stress of, oh my god, what books I need to read at that future moment. So I like to set goals for my reading and also all the other aspects of my life, because when it comes into action, making decisions is actually a very mentally drained process for me. So I don't like to make decisions when I need to do things. So I like to have a particular list, not stick to, but like reference to, so that I know what I wanted to achieve. If I don't want to think about what I need to do at the moment, at least I have a plan that I know if I follow this list, I'll achieve my goals that I set for myself before. And the second question is, are you willing to absolutely complete your goals, or it's more like a general direction that guides you? And surprisingly, kind of contrast with my answer for the first question, I don't stick to my goals. And I came to learn that it is okay for me to change things on my goal list, or like change my opinion after I make the goals, so I don't feel guilty about not completing my goal. Because this is another thing that related to my energy level. If you didn't know that, I live with my depression, so I constantly need to manage my energy, and I need to accept that sometimes I just don't have any energy to do anything, not to mention reading. So for those days, my main focus for the day would be just like continue if I can take care of my eating, if I can sleep well, so those very essential things. So my other plans kind of need to set aside because I don't have energy to complete them. And I've been working with my therapist. She let me know that it is okay. Not like she let me know, she let me realize that it is okay to change my ideas, to change my mind after I make my goals. Because when I first started to work with her, I still held the guilty that I didn't complete some things that I promised one of my classmates in primary school. And I don't even remember the name of the classmates, but I just still have this shame and guilt that carry on in me for the whole time of my life. So I needed to make peace with changing my mind and don't complete my goals, and it's absolutely okay for me. But when I have the energy, I do want to achieve all my goals. And the third question is, when in a year do you set new goals? Like I said before, I set goals in the beginning of the year, like everybody on the planet, and also the beginning of every month, because I do want to have a kind of guideline for my reading for the month. I have a direction that I want to read more diversely. I want to read more books about and from countries in general, from all over the world. And also I used to set goals for the readathons that I'm interested in joining in, but recently in the past year and a half, I didn't join any readathon because I started my own From and About Asia reading project, where I focus on reading books from one particular Asian country a month. So that already gives me a handful of books to read each month. On top of that, I still have other interests. So yeah, so I don't set goals for readathons because I don't participate in them anymore. But if there is a readathon that I'm strongly interested in the future, I feel like I'm still gonna participate in them and set goals for those. The next question is, do you have a long-standing goals that you have for every year, and what are they? And I was thinking about this question. I realized that even though I don't think myself have a long-standing goals for my reading life, I do set goals for reading 50 books per year for the past couple of years, with like 2 of the years I read like 10 books. And then when it comes to the From and About Asia reading project, I do want to read books about one Asian country per month. So there are so many Asian countries in the world. So that project is gonna last more than 2 years, nearly 3 years, depends on our pace of reading it. So I think that counts as a long-standing goal. And the other repetitive goals that I notice is since I'm living in the US as a Chinese, I do want to read more from Chinese authors each year, but I don't necessarily get to complete that goal because I have limited access to books written in Chinese. The next question is what goals has been the most successful by whatever metrics you choose? This question got me into a very long and deep thinking, but I don't think I have an answer. I feel like in the 2 years before last October, I wasn't actually actively reading. And also before 2.5 years ago, it was pre-COVID time, and the time just became very blurred in my mind. I don't remember how I lived before COVID. How sad. But yeah, I don't think I have an answer for this question, simply because that for this time being, I'm still focusing on reading consistently and reading at this moment, not really thinking back in time. The sixth question is what goal has not gone to the plan and what went wrong? Although I don't have a successful story for the last question, I do have a funny story for this one. When I just started to make BookTube videos, I was so excited and got carried away by the idea of making BookTube videos. But I was just going into the reading world in English books because like previously I wasn't reading for quite some time before I joined BookTube, and before that all of my reading was done in Chinese. So I didn't really know what books on the English market that I want to read, and I kind of still figuring out my taste for reading in the world of English books. So I somehow had this idea of doing a project called Reading from A to Z Reading Challenge or A to Z Reading Project. Just a project from the name, you can guess that I pick 26 authors from their initials where they came from A to Z, and I pick one book of each of those authors to read, so I have 26 books to read. I think this will be a very fun project for me, and also because I didn't know what contents I want to create on BookTube, I was also thinking, oh, maybe this one will be a general guideline for my book reviews or whatever. The hard thing about A to Z is it's very easy for us to pick authors from some like very common used last name like S, like J or M or something. But it's so difficult to pick authors that initials starts with the less used, less common letters. That also interests me. Author with less common initials do exist, but it's very hard for their books to also fit in my interests of reading. But I somehow put together this list of 26 books that I want to read, with only like half of the books that I want to actually that I'm interested in reading, and half of the other books are kind of filler content that on the list. After I started to read for that project, I just quickly realized that a lot of the books on the list that I'm actually not interested in and they're not for me. And I also realized that I don't actually want to create videos that I don't genuinely want to talk about. So that project is a major fail on my life and also my booktubing life. And also I took down the to-do list for A to Z project. If you want to see, well, there's no way you can see it. It became my little secret, but I'm just like using the stories to remind me that whenever I'm making a booktube video, I really need to feel this urge to make it. I want to talk about the things that I really care about and that are really interests me. So I guess I learned something from that failure experiences, and also I have a funny story to talk about. And the next question is, do you change your goals by how the last reading year has gone? And my answer is simply no, I don't actually change my goals depending on my previous years. I'm more setting my goals based on my current interest and what I want my readings to go in the future, not looking from the past. The eighth question is, do you track your reading goals? If so, how? I don't actually track my yearly reading goals after I read a book. I track my yearly goals when I'm making my TBRs for each month. For example, if I want to make more diversely in the year, I make sure to incorporate different authors from different backgrounds in my following TBRs, so I don't necessarily go back and look at it. And I don't actually mind if I go off track during the year because, again, we need to accept changes after after we make our goals. But I do calculate the stats after a whole year just because I want to look at my reading and know that, oh, how many books I have read in this genre and how many books I read for that genre, kind of this thing. So what I usually do is I export all the data from Goodreads to a spreadsheet and started to analyzing all the data from there. I'm still using Goodreads to track or more like mark my readings after I'm done with each book, just because I started to use Goodreads when I first started to read in English. So at that time, it was a fresh start for me because before Goodreads, I track all my readings on a website called Douban because my readings are majorly done in Chinese. And after I started to use Goodreads, I just always use it, and now it has all the English books that I have read. And I have also wanted to transfer to Storygraph, but I just have one issue with Storygraph is because I also read books in Chinese or like a lot of the translated books from Japanese into Chinese, and a lot of those books, they don't have the books on Storygraphs yet, and I don't really have the time to manually input the data for the platform. I do think in the future, maybe the database is more established, I will transfer my data there, but not at this moment. It's just still very inconvenient and very time consuming for me. And the last question in this tag is, has any of these changed a lot during your reading life and why? And I do want to say that before I joined BookTube, I don't have a reading goal. I haven't been actively reading for a couple of years because of all the moving across the world and all the transitions. And before that, I did have reading goals for a little short period of time because I was hosting a offline book club in Beijing. So we have a theme of reading every month, so I was reading for the theme in order to host the book club. But before the book club, I don't really have goals again because growing up, I've always reading books as a pleasure, so I don't actually track any of the things. It's just one of my relaxation tools. But after joining BookTube though, so many TBRs, so many reading goals, sometimes it can feel very overwhelming, but like I said, after I started to accept that I can make changes after I make a plan because I have different feelings about those plans, I started to use reading goals as a guideline for my reading direction, not necessarily for my reading action. So yeah, that's my story with reading goals. I really like this tag. If I just talk about reading goals in general, I don't know if I can go into depth into some of the questions like this. I hope you also enjoyed watching me talking about my reading goals this way. In terms of tagging people, I just want to tag everyone because I feel like these questions are very good to talk about reading goals, so feel free to tag yourself. And also please let me know in the comment section down below, do you have reading goals? Are you treating your reading goals as a direction or your way of action? And also don't forget to say hi, thumbs up to this video if you like them. And I hope you happy reading, stay healthy, stay safe. I'll see you in my next Bookish video. Bye!